I think oftentimes leaders are expected to be something other than human. And I was reflecting on leadership that I had seen over the course of my career, a leader that I had been this morning with my wife, and I realized the reason why someone sucks as a leader is because they have yet to develop some important personal skills. Oftentimes in leadership, it seems like we very much train systems, right? There's Scrum and project management, and you may even train on things like how to give one-on-ones and the right way to give feedback and study organizational psychology. I think there's a lot of value to these things, or at least potentially there's valuable things in them. But as I was thinking about today and complaining, leadership, all the people who have ever been leaders are also people. And as I was discussing this, just realizing that for the most part, I think oftentimes we as humans, I'm not sure why, to some degree I don't know that it's important for this discussion, but let's just assume that this is fairly consistent, because I personally think anecdotally in my observations it is, that we oftentimes don't really know what we want. I'm not going to get super deep into the weeds of how to find that, though I hope to talk about that at great length on this channel. At least right now, I just want to point out some anecdotes from my own career and point out how easy it is to be your own worst enemy in getting what you actually want. So, there was once a company that I worked for that somewhere on the wall, they had a screen that showed errors. And I was talking about this with a friend of mine. And on the screen, there had been an error for like 3 days. And this friend of mine was saying, yeah, I remember when like a leader came in and said, if the CEO of this company were to ever see that, that screen with 3 days of the same error being up there, like he'd be really angry. And my friend and I were talking about like, well, we remember working a lot, working hard. And my friend said, well, yeah, the reason why I didn't tackle that error is because I was working on something else that was important. And in the discussion, we both kind of said, well, either the error is important, and then we should figure out how an important error is not getting touched for 3 days, or probably more of what was actually the case, if it's been 3 days and nothing's on fire, then it's probably a bad indicator, right? We probably need to suppress that error or have a different mechanism or whatever. But all that to say, the real thing that this person coming in and expressing fear over and concern over, well, they were optimizing for what was going to be the appearance of that situation instead of pausing to think, well, what do we actually want? That company actually will obviously, for obvious reasons, remain nameless, but it was fraught with emotional leadership, just in a way that people would come in, and if they felt angry, then everyone knew it. If they felt happy, I guess everyone knew that, though one might debate it, that we didn't get as much of that as we wanted. But a lot of us coworkers who work there have made the observation to each other over the years since then that we optimized for the optics instead of actually what might have been helpful. All this to say, as a leader and as a person, right? I want to basically just say, anytime I say leader or person, I'm treating those as interchangeable, because leaders are people, and people sometimes are called to be leaders. The failings of a leader are on display for everyone, but that's not because it's some magical leadership thing. It's because that person is in a visually prominent position, and when any one of us is in a visually prominent position, our failings are on display. And that's just how it goes. But we tend to optimize for what we think we want. And the whole point of this video, the whole point of this discussion, is to suggest and to insist that it is a critical skill that I just don't see people discuss in a business context, to take a moment to pause and say, what do I really want? Let's talk about this a bit more. I say in the business world, this isn't covered as well as I think it could be. I think it's decently covered in like the psychology or philosophy world, because it's a lot of the elements of self-actualization, what do you even want? Are you running away from things, or are you running towards things, right? There's a lot of euphemistic language around it, but ultimately being able to pause and say, this thing doesn't strike my fancy. This thing just doesn't interest me, but that thing does. Well, then how do we make personal life changes to move towards the thing that does interest you? And yet we get into business and we do these crazy things that end up thwarting our effort. With the company with the error message on the TV for 3 days, worrying about what a leader of the company is going to think is not ultimately. I think you could even talk to the leader and present the right kind of questions and get that leader to tell you, I don't want people just to appease me simply for the sake of appeasing me. What I really want is to build, people say all the time, build the right things. Let's set aside the kind of blurry definitions, or at least the subjectivity of the concept of the right things, and at least graciously interpret that as build things that are going to make an impact in the market, make it so we can sell product or software or whatever it is, and effectively take care of our users and get money from them to continue as a business. Nowhere in those things, right? Because that's the bottom line. You can make the leaders happy up and down the leadership org chart, right? The hierarchy of all the leaders, and still not sell anything. Because when I was a leader, you probably could have made me happy if you gave me a Nutrageous bar and talked to me about my favorite video game. I would feel happiness. It would have made no difference for that example, right? A Nutrageous bar. Nutrageous bar is delicious, don't get me wrong. But that wasn't the software we were building, right? That wasn't the product that we were building. So pausing to reflect and say, well, now turn on the other side, right? From the leader perspective, and this is ultimately where I want to go with this, is as a leader, when you are looking at how am I interacting with people, right? I'm not sure that this could ever be foisted onto somebody or shoved in somebody's head or shoehorned into their ear. There are just leaders, again, people that are out of touch with certain things. Another way to say it is the classic, we just don't know what we don't know. And I have driven myself crazy looking at some of the leaders I've worked with in my career and just thought, how could you treat people that way, right? Abusive language, yelling, throwing things across the room. These stories that like sound like almost made up for a sitcom or a Office Place drama or something, because they're so in the abstract, right? When you just look at those situations and go, well, clearly that seems like a rude and abusive way to treat another human being. Fine. But then to think, well, but what were my failings? Honestly, one of my big failings was that I don't think I was firm enough with people to give them a good, solid direction. I tended to be very wishy-washy and come from a place of, I hope this person still likes me when I'm done giving instructions, instead of what I think would have been the better thing, to give clear and concise instructions directly, right? Succinctly, instead of beating around the bush, right? And again, therein lies another example of my failure was wanting to be liked. And so I didn't pause to go, what am I doing? Well, maybe I don't know, right? Like, again, I don't know. Maybe I'm going around, my ego tells me I'm a great leader. I'm doing great. Okay. But this is the critical skill. Pause and actually talk to yourself. Actually ask yourself, what do I want? What do I want to accomplish? Right? And, well, okay. I'm thinking of, when I was a leader. Well, I want to get these teams to build some features that I have been tasked with, so that, these people have a chance to look good. I have a chance to look good, and we get good stuff done. And then to pause and think, okay, that's okay. That's what you want. Now, that is the end goal, and it's a bit nebulous, but that's the end goal. Now work backwards. Well, if I'm hoping that they will do a task, I need to be clear about my communication and the frequency of my communication, the style of my communication, and then you continue to work back and go, actually, I can see where in that meeting I had, I wasn't clear, and that meeting, that was a bit better. I actually don't care to moralize a certain type of communication or to tell you should or shouldn't. Again, I think we could draw up lines around extremes, right? Telling people, I'm just thinking of some of like the wild things I've experienced, or, coworkers around me have experienced, threats of bodily harm, or saying, man, I'd really like to beat the, expletive out of that person over there. It's like, okay, well, I think those are those are lawsuit material. Okay, let's assume that lawsuit material is bad form. We're going to assume you're not going to engage in those. And if you do, you're going to swiftly apologize and rectify that level of unkindness, inhumane, obnoxious treatment. Okay, fine. But I don't even think those people, I don't know, wherever far back in their history, woke up and said, yes, I can't wait to be a leader because I want to yell at people. Again, what do they want? Right? Now, this is the interesting part, and this is why I think it's a skill to be practiced. It's not just about asking yourself, well, what do I want? It's the practice of going, what do I want? And where are the places that I am acting towards what I want? And to actually go through that, I find, and this is my hypothesis, but I strongly suggest that this will at least be the same general experience that you will have as a person, as a leader, to be able to say, when I really get concrete about what I want, I realize that there are times when I act in accordance with that goal or set of goals, and there are times when actually I see that maybe I was trying, or I thought I was acting towards that thing, but the action I was taking wasn't really getting me there, right? Case in point, that if you're going, well, I really want to hit this deadline for a thing. Well, sometimes we get stressed, and as people, when we are stressed, we tend to, without practice, to the contrary, we tend to let our emotions just kind of run away with us. I certainly have done that. And looking at this, you go, oh, yeah, I yelled at people, right? Or I, said something in like a curt and discourteous manner. Oh, okay. Well, and maybe that's a hard thing to see, right? Because again, if you're going, oh yeah, that time where I like threatened bodily harm, like, okay, again, those are the easy, like, now class, do we threaten bodily harm or do we not to our coworkers or, people that we are a boss to? Well, okay, yeah, don't do that. But this is the process of maturing. This is the process of self-reflection, and it is difficult. Going back and saying, here are the actions I took, right? Because maybe you go, well, nothing stands out as dysfunctional, right? Like everything, yeah, okay, I was firm with those people. Okay. Did it have the effect you wanted? Did people seem to do what you wanted? And what were their moods when you engaged with them? It's so obvious to me, and this is, I feel like this is like, the hot take of the video, but I really truly don't mean to simply, and I don't mean to throw leaders under any buses and just go, well, like leaders are all crap. I think it's so important to recognize that leaders are people. When I have been put into a leadership position, it has been very obvious to me sometimes my failings. And sadly, with a healthy dose of embarrassment and shame, guilt. We should do a video on guilt versus shame. If you'd like to hear me discuss my ideas on that, I'd love to drop a comment down below. Tell me what you think. But at least a healthy amount of guilt and or shame around, like, ooh, I thought I was doing what I believe was the right thing to do, and I thought I was doing what other people wanted me to do. That's, spoiler alert, that's a little bit of the difference between guilt and shame. And yet now I'm hearing from people like, yeah, like it didn't go so well. Probably some of the hardest moments of my career have been when I'm going, hey, me and that person, we're buds, right? We've like carpooled together. We like hang out, we talk, and like we've even had like some heart to heart kind of things, or, oh, this company's rough to work for, but we're gonna make it together. And then the thing ends, and I'm thinking of a couple companies, a couple people, but you hang out with those people and it's like, oh, it's very apparent. I don't know how I'd prove this other than asking the person, right? But at least I get the vibe that it's like, oh, you don't want to be here with me. Like, we're not really close. That hurts, right? I'm not saying you have to be best friends with every single person you work with. Some people on paper should have been my best friend and we just butted heads. And some people are like, oh my gosh, we have nothing in common, on paper. And then it turns out we just loved working together because we just had a great time. Okay, Cool. Humans are weird, right? But all that to say that it's interesting to see that sometimes you just, without this process of introspection, I worry that the best case scenario for some of these what I don't know elements would be years after the situation has passed and I can't affect it anymore, right? I can't like change anything. And and again, that's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is you're just like walking through life, leaving, burning bridges and leaving like wreckage behind you. And just like, I'm an amazing leader. I think I've met people who are oblivious like that. And I think I've been a person who is oblivious like that. There, but for the grace of God, perhaps go all of us. I will leave on this note, this concept, that I am not looking to excuse poor behavior. I am looking to find a balance between mercy and justice here, right? I am looking to be able to say there are behaviors that are dysfunctional and are ultimately self-defeating, and also at the same time to find a bit of the grace that we can give to ourselves and other people and say, but that's not because that person just isn't cut out to be a leader. I think that while yes, experience and mileage between person to person is going to vary greatly, I believe that anyone who applies effort to strive in the case of being a better human in terms of communicating more clearly, exploring your own personal desires so that you can really be concrete about what you really want, and then working backwards from that so that you can really go, I need to ask the right questions and, maybe command the right situations to really get what I want, instead of, I don't know what I want, but dang it, if these people don't listen to me, I'm going to freak out, or God, why can't you just listen to me? Well, because maybe they don't understand the vision. And if you really are serious about accomplishing your goals, you can have more grace and patience and go, maybe it's a lack of vision. Maybe we don't share the same goals. You could still be an empathetic and sympathetic person and occasionally have to fire someone, or occasionally have to break up with somebody, or disconnect in, a friendship or a work relationship. Yep. Maybe that's just how it's going to be, because welcome to the world. It's not going to be perfect. But I do think that in my experience, being able to notice that just because somebody gets older doesn't mean that they are maturing. I was talking to my sister recently, and she and I were both kind of chuckling about it's weird to occasionally meet people, we were saying, in their 60s or whatever, but whatever the age is, but sometimes you have these moments where you meet someone who is older than you and you go, oh, okay, in my mind, I'm going, you got, more gray hair than I have. Maybe you're more thinned hair, balding than I am. And so, just going, oh, well, this is maturity, right? This is a wizened old person. And then they say or do something and you go, wait, what? What just happened? And it's taken me a long time to be able to catch this, and I'm still not excellent at catching it. I'm getting better because I'm practicing. And I think there's the key, right? Practicing, noticing, instead of just going, I just don't like that person. Okay, why? What are they doing? What's an action that you find abhorrent? I'm thinking of one time in a leadership position where I had someone call me up and chew me out and tell me all the ways that I was failing them as a leader. And at that point, I was doing this as a like pro bono, like I wasn't getting paid for being this leader. And like, and you know, at first I was like, man, like I feel really hurt and offended and really irritated. And like, how could they say these things to me? And as I sat with it, honestly, over a few years, I realized this person is throwing a fit the same way that I've seen my children do when they were 3. But the moral isn't that like, then I can say, ha ha ha, right? I did plenty of, I got a chip on my shoulder, that person's so grumpy, not. But I've come to realize, but again, give some grace. There but for the grace of God could go I. For whatever reason, I have had an opportunity to see that, to feel the ick that it brought to me, and then to go, but how could someone act this way and feel okay acting that way? Maybe they're acting out of emotion, maybe they were stressed, maybe they were worried about things that are hidden to me still, and I don't understand. It doesn't excuse the behavior. Again, people who act in ways that we, you know, like feel frustrated by, that's our emotions signaling to us, saying something about this is pricking, you know, up against like something that is important to me, right? Okay. But to also recognize, just because somebody got older, maybe they missed opportunities, maybe they chose poorly and didn't take the opportunities to work on maturity. Just because somebody got put into a leadership position, I mean, this is classic. This is the, oh shoot, I'm forgetting the guy's name. I should look it up here. A gentleman who wrote this great book that he wrote as satire, right? And he said we like rise to the level of our incompetence. And he even said, I'll have to like write the name, you know, right here of, you know, put a picture of the book or whatever. But he said he'd even get companies calling him up to ask him to come do like leadership seminars. And he said, guys, you're missing the point. Like, this is exactly what I'm trying to describe in the book, that we say, hey, you're a great engineer. Now we're going to make you a leader, right? Because if you're good at being an engineer, you must be good at leading engineers. Those are different. Right? Hey, you're a great baker. You must be really good at knowing how to do like finances for a bakery because you're a great baker. Says who? Not necessarily, right? The good news to me and the good news to you is that you can explore where you are lacking in skills, right? Or maybe I believe incorrectly, but you might be tempted to say where I suck. Well, what does it mean to suck at something? It just means that you're not good at it yet. Not everyone's going to be a master of everything they put their mind to, but I promise you that if you put effort into things, you will see some degree of returns on that. If you really want to become a better leader, then pausing to say, what do I really want? And how am I acting to get there? And not just like 1 or 2 times, but like try to like, I mean, Adam Grant once said, when leaders, I mean, in particular leaders, but I think this again applies to everybody, when leaders don't take the time to own up to their mistakes and their shortcomings to the people around them, they kind of doubly shoot themselves in the foot, right? They miss out in 2 ways. One, everybody who worked with you already knows the things that you struggle with, right? It's very obvious to them. And so you're like trying to pretend that you don't have flaws, which that destroys rapport, right? That hurts relationships. And also you would gain, I mean, conversely, you would build a lot of rapport with people if you would pause and say, hey, I know this is something that people have told me, and I'm trying to work on it, right? Case in point, I love to talk. I know that some people I've had one-on-ones with as I was their manager in some shape or form, don't really love to talk. And much to my embarrassment, there have been times where I definitely talked for a long time, only to get out of that meeting and go, I don't think I let that person talk enough. And they don't even really like to talk. And I just like forced them to turn on the Neil Oler show. Oh my gosh. Like I feel so embarrassed by that. But it's something that I did. And the key part is the reason why I want to change that is because not all the time does that align with my goals. There are some times where somebody may be grieving or having a hard time or, struggling. And I have been told, and it's been some of the sweetest feedback I've ever had from other humans, that in the men's therapy group that I did, somebody said, Neil, I really appreciate that you talking like helps to get the conversation flowing. And there have been times throughout the week where I have struggled with my mental health, and I've heard your voice in my head as a comfort. That's really meaningful to me. If I were to just shut down and say, see, right, that's where we're just going to teach this blanket, statement and say, as a leader, as a human, you should never talk longer than X amount of minutes, and I would have missed out on those opportunities, right? That was meaningful to me, because in that setting, I'm looking to apply some social lubricant. I'm looking to get the familiarity rolling. We're sitting there talking about heavy topics of suicidality and depression, and those are heavy topics we don't have a lot of practice talking about. Yeah, like Neil Oler can come in and help with that. But if I just say, thus, I'm always doing great and I'm always getting what I want because I'm just great, right? Why would I change anything? Then you put the same kind of Neil and you put him into a one-on-one situation where it's my opinion and experience that you need to give more opportunity for the person with whom you are having a conversation to talk a bit more about how they are doing with things, and to ask open-ended questions to really explore how they're doing. Well, I haven't done so great there, right? It hasn't been the same kind of thing because I talk too much. The goal is to simply, what do I want? What is my real goal of the situation? And to, instead of trying to plan out the execution, instead simply to say, what are my goals, so that I can look at the actions that I will take or did take and just simply say, did that have the real effect that I wanted? People want to do good work. By and large, humans, especially the ones of us that have been labeled lazy or disinterested, I think just as easily could be described as burnt out and scared and not sure how they fit in. We as humans have an opportunity to engage the people around us and to build relationships. I truly believe that is like the only real thing that really matters in life, is to build the relationships that matter to you. If you are able to pause to really say, what do I want out of this relationship, right? To what is my goal here? And then work backwards from that and say, well, I once talked to a buddy of mine who, we were both kind of commiserating about sometimes it's scary to have conversations with our spouses about budgets, right? Like you've spent too much money or I've spent too much money, and well, because in the past it's led to fighting, it's led to discord. But when I can pause and say, well, actually, my goal here is both, I recognize that maybe spending is not in accordance with, we're living beyond our means. We're spending more money. More money is going out than is coming in. If you're trying to fill up a tank, if there's more water leaving the tank than is coming in, it's basic physics that that tank is going to be empty, right? It's not going to work well. But I also care about my spouse. I care about the relationship. And so what do I want? Well, I want to be able to have a conversation that is also, I want to have a conversation that is direct enough to discuss the point, right, of we need less money to go out than is coming in, while also being able to say, but sweetheart, I care about you and I care about our relationship. And quite frankly, I'm worried I'm going to do this badly. I'm worried that I'm going to say something in this conversation that's going to hurt your feelings. And I'm not trying to excuse that or, say like, well, I owned up to it. So now I get, just like a get out of jail free card to say whatever I want. No, but I want you to know that I'm trying to figure out how to get what I really want, which is serious discussion with someone I love and I want to maintain a relationship with even after this serious discussion. Obviously, maybe not telling your coworkers you love them. If you feel so moved, I think we should show more love in this world, so I'm all about that. But in any case, being able to really say, hey, I want to discuss something that, is perhaps dysfunctional. Either I'm doing it, maybe I'm saying you doing it, but I care about the relationship, right? That's just one example of what do you really want. But oftentimes we get so busy and so hustled and so stressed that we just don't take the time to say, what do I really want? And kick off that process of introspection and reflection. And we just barrel down the road of, well, we got to get this project done. And so if I yell at people or if I am, sorry, had a phone alarm go off. All this to say, if you are not taking the opportunity to practice pausing and saying, what do I really want? That's the skill. I know it sounds silly. Try it. Try it out this week. Just simply say, what do I want? If you are irritated with a leader or someone else around you, maybe pause and in order to find a way to give them some grace to say, what do they really want? And yes, they may be acting in a way that seems counter to getting what they really want, but now you can at least, with a air of friendship and grace, be able to say, hey, I think you want, to improve the product. I noticed that you suggested this, and this was a suggestion, like, hey, I've tried putting together a bit of a first draft of what we could do to make this better. Instead of what I have long time done, just going, what the heck's their problem? Why are they acting this way? Because ultimately, there's a reason. I don't know if it's important to understand all of it, but to be able to say, whatever the reason is that they feel that's okay, what are they really trying to drive towards? And how can I show some compassion and help them get there? Thank you for joining me. I know this was a kind of a deep dive into this, and I hope you found it interesting. I'd love to know if I'm your second monitor buddy or you're driving to work listening to this or wherever I may find you. Please let me know. I certainly would love it if you'd subscribe and comment and like it, all that stuff. But in any case, I appreciate you watching this, and I appreciate your willingness to engage in the topics of introspection and the balancing of grace and mercy with leaders. And I'll catch you next time.